In the heart of West Africa, a moment of quiet defiance has shaken the foundations of global economic narratives. Burkina Faso, long seen as one of the world's poorest and most dependent nations, has made a bold move. The payment of $4.797 million in internal debt without asking for a single cent from the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, or any Western power. This is more than a financial transaction. It is a political statement, a line drawn in the sand by a country that has decided to reclaim its future, its dignity, and its independence. At the center of this unexpected revolution stands Captain Ibrahim, the young military leader who, despite navigating political instability, terrorist threats, and economic hardship, has chosen a different path. A path that rejects the dependency model that has shaped much of Africa's post-colonial history. For decades, African nations have been locked in a cycle of debt and dependence. Loans from international institutions came with strings, austerity measures, privatizations, currency devaluations, and open markets that benefited foreign investors more than local people. These deals were often presented as necessary reforms, but in reality, they deepened poverty, eroded sovereignty, and trapped nations in endless repayment plans. As Burkina Faso is saying, no more. The $4.797 million payment to domestic creditors was made using national resources, earned and mobilized from within the country. No foreign bailout, no emergency rescue, just fiscal discipline, strategic planning, and the political will to prioritize local stability over international approval. It is, in every sense, a declaration of financial sovereignty. This act did not go unnoticed. Economists and politicians across Africa and beyond began to ask, how did Burkina Faso do this, especially while under political and military pressure? How did a landlocked country battling insurgencies and sanctions manage to find the money and make such a clear statement? The answer lies in a shift of mindset and a shift in leadership. Captain, who took power with promises to restore security and return dignity to the people, has consistently emphasized, unlike past regimes that looked outward for validation and funding, has looked inward to the land, the people, and the untapped potential buried beneath years of corruption and neglect. Under his leadership, there has been a crackdown on elite corruption and a renewed focus on public accountability. Resource contracts are being re-examined. Gold exports, one of Burkina Faso's largest income sources, are being redirected to benefit the national budget rather than lining the pockets of a few. Public spending has been reprioritized. Military operations to stabilize the country continue. But there's also visible investment in agriculture, infrastructure, and domestic industry. The state is encouraging local production, community-based initiatives, and microfinancing schemes to strengthen internal markets. This new approach is not without risks. Breaking away from traditional lenders can isolate a country from global capital flow. It can trigger diplomatic pressure, currency instability, and even attempts at political sabotage. He is well aware of these risks, and yet he continues forward, backed not by multinational institutions, but by a growing popular movement that sees in him a symbol of African pride. For many in Burkina Faso, this debt payment is not just about money, it is about memory, a break from the humiliation of begging, a step away from the image of Africa as a continent forever waiting for help. It is a moment of collective empowerment. Citizens have taken notice. Across social media, neighborhoods, and national radio, the message is clear. We did this ourselves. This is inspiring a new generation to believe that their country is not too small, not too poor, and not too weak to stand on its own. Outside Burkina Faso, reactions are mixed. Western diplomats are cautious. International media has largely ignored the story. But in other parts of Africa, in Mali, Niger, Guinea, and beyond, this move is being watched closely. Many see in its actions the emergence of a new geopolitical current, one that favors regional solidarity, national sovereignty, and grassroots strength over foreign aid dependency. The implications are enormous. If Burkina Faso can stabilize itself and build its economy from within, it could serve as a model for dozens of other nations trapped in similar cycles of debt and dependency. It would challenge the very structure of global finance, which has long profited from African vulnerability. Critics argue that such a path is unsustainable, that eventually Burkina Faso will need to return to the IMF or risk collapse. But supporters point out that dependence itself is what brought collapse in the first place. Maybe the real risk lies in staying the same, not in trying something new. In the coming months, the true impact of this bold financial maneuver will become clearer. But already it has planted a seed, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. This is not just an economic story. It is a rebirth of belief, the reawakening of a people who are tired of waiting for permission to thrive. This approach to governance has left many observers, both in Africa and abroad, struggling to categorize him. Is he a military populist, a revolutionary, a nationalist? For the people of Burkina Faso, those labels don't matter as much as results. And results, so far, are speaking for themselves. In villages and towns that were once forgotten by national politics, there is a sense of awakening. People feel seen. They feel like they are part of a national effort that is finally being led by someone who doesn't talk down to them but listens, includes, and empowers. His speeches are short, direct, and delivered in plain language. He avoids the complex economic jargon that has dominated African leadership circles for decades. He doesn't promise miracles. He promises work, sacrifice, and sovereignty. And in a country that has long been treated as a pawn in larger geopolitical games, that message has hit home. Inside Burkina Faso, the mood is changing. For the first time in years, national celebrations feel genuine. Flags are waved not as ritual, but with pride. Youth groups are organizing street cleanups, educational workshops, and even community patrols. Civil society is reawakening, not in opposition to the government, but in collaboration with a national vision. And the media, once silent or submissive, now increasingly vocal. Local journalists are documenting the changes, questioning the policies, and engaging in dialogue. Unlike what many feared, the new government has not shut down criticism. It has invited debate. What matters, they say, is that the debate is local, that it is voices debating futures. Of course, the road ahead is long. The country still faces armed insurgencies, fragile infrastructure, and deep poverty. One debt payment, no matter how symbolic, does not fix decades of exploitation and mismanagement. But it's a start. And perhaps more importantly, it's a start made on Burkina Faso's terms. Burkina Faso's journey is now becoming a case study in what national determination can achieve under pressure. And yet, even as the country reclaims its economic agency, it must walk a tightrope. One where the smallest misstep could bring both domestic setbacks and international retaliation. This is the delicate balance that Captain Ibrahim is navigating between transformation and stability, between independence and isolation. One of the most striking aspects of S leadership is his refusal to accept the narrative that Faso is too poor to solve its own problems. He challenges the assumption that African nations must always reach outward before looking inward. And through a mix of military discipline, economic realignment, and grassroots empowerment, he is reshaping what is possible, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. But the challenges remain steep. Burkina Faso is still fighting violent insurgencies in the north and east of the country. Whole regions remain destabilized by terrorist factions, some of which thrive on the very poverty and desperation that is trying to undo. The military remains overstretched. and infrastructure in those regions is weak or non-existent. However, the government's strategy has started to evolve. Rather than depending solely on foreign troops or outside security consultants, has increased investment in local defense, community-based protection forces, better equipment for national troops, and intelligence coordination between villages. It's not just about fighting terrorism. It's about restoring public trust. In many places where the government was once seen as absent, it is now present. Not through billboards or speeches, but through action. Health centers reopening, schools receiving supplies, local officials addressing complaints face-to-face. In the capital, Ouagadougou, there is growing political discourse. Not everyone agrees with this approach. Some opposition leaders argue that cutting ties with foreign partners may backfire. Others warn that too much centralization of power could lead to authoritarianism. But even critics admit that something fundamental has shifted. The country now believes it can stand on its own. That mental shift alone is more powerful than any foreign loan or UN resolution. S vision for Burkina Faso is clear. He wants a country that is secure, self-reliant, and sovereign, politically, economically, and culturally. And while many in the international community view this as risky or rebellious, there is an undeniable logic behind it. No nation can grow strong while living under the constant shadow of dependency. The young generation, many of whom have known nothing but conflict and economic stagnation, are particularly energized by this moment. University students are organizing debates about African monetary independence. Youth activists are launching local manufacturing cooperatives. Startups are emerging that seek to innovate with resources, not imported solutions. Even in popular culture, the shift is visible. Music, film, and art are reflecting the mood of resistance and rebirth. Songs praising national pride, posters celebrating the strength of African women, and street murals depicting farmers as heroes are becoming symbols of a deeper cultural transformation. The conversation is changing from aid to agency, from foreign dependence to local responsibility. This does not mean Burkina Faso is turning its back on the world. Rather, it is asking to engage with the world on fairer terms, to be a partner, not a client, to trade, not beg, to participate, not obey. And this idea that Africa can redefine the terms of its engagement may be its most revolutionary contribution. He is not simply rejecting Western influence. He is offering an alternative vision of what post-colonial leadership could look like. Practical, grounded, and unapologetically sovereign. A leadership model rooted in reality, not fantasy. One that draws strength from its own soil rather than from imported ideologies. As other African nations watch and wait, the pressure on Burkina Faso is immense. If fails, critics will claim his approach was reckless. If he succeeds, it could inspire a wave of similar movements across the continent. The stakes could not be higher. But whatever the future holds, one thing is now certain. Burkina Faso is no longer invisible. It is no longer a forgotten state in the middle of this. It is a front line of a new kind of revolution, not armed with guns alone, but with ideals, with a determination to build, to rebuild, and to redefine. His decision to pay some way. $797 million in internal debt without foreign help may seem like a footnote in global finance. But in the history of African sovereignty, it may mark the beginning of a new chapter, one in which dignity is not measured by the approval of foreign lenders, but by the courage to say, we will build this ourselves, because true independence is not declared. It is practiced every day, with every decision, with every stone laid on a new road, with every coin that stays in the country, with every leader who refuses to. Burkina Faso has chosen its path. Now the world must decide how to respond.